Welcome to LOA Today. I'm Walt Thiessen here with Ioana June Thiessen and Louis D'Souza. Today is Monday, April the 27th, 2020, 4 p.m. New York time, and wherever you are, thank you for joining us for another episode of LOA Today, your daily dose of happy. And we thought we were going to have a special guest here, but he doesn't seem to have found the connection, so we'll probably have to schedule that for another time, but that's okay. We can just do one of our regular shows, and I'm going to start off with a little news. I don't know if you guys heard about this. It just came out within the last hour or two, but the country of New Zealand has declared victory over the coronavirus.
Yes, I saw that.
Did you see that? Yeah, that was really interesting. Apparently their cases are down into the single digits. And do we have any information about what they're claiming is making the whole thing work, why they were so successful? Because all I saw were just news reports saying that they've declared victory, which sounds like the general's declaring victory and going home while the troops are trying to figure it out. But you know something I don't know.
Yeah, so I was drawn to it because there was an article about the fact that all the countries that are successfully managing this pandemic are actually led by women.
Ah, okay. Okay.
Yeah, so they talked about New Zealand and Germany and I should remember these. It was like 5 of them. But New Zealand in particular, well, I shouldn't say in particular. They were like the others in that they started testing early and, putting everything in place and just having a system in place, way in advance of things getting crazy. So they were able to keep a good handle on it. So I think that helped.
From what I was hearing, though, it doesn't sound like theirs in New Zealand anyway was in place a lot sooner than other countries were. It sounds like they were all hitting around the same time. So I'm wondering how do we know that actually is a contributing factor?
Well, so countries start all, but what they do when they start is what makes the difference. So I think having testing was one of the things that was important, and the fact that their healthcare system was, prepared in terms of, having all the necessary PPE and all the other stuff to kind of be able to take care of the patients, for the staff to be able to deal with the possible onslaught. But they were very prepared. That was one of the things that was
great. That's fabulous. I love that they do that. I don't really see how that stops the pandemic, but it certainly starts great healthcare. I like that part.
Yeah. No, there's some other countries that have done the same thing. They're not as gotten as much promotion. In fact, the country where I originate from, this tiny little twin island state of Trinidad and Tobago, they have gotten commendations from the United Nations for the way that they've handled the situation. And the prime minister there, he was very proactive in terms of he put social distancing in place very early, much to the distress of the natives. And, he did a lot of things like he shut off the borders very early. In fact, there was a lot of protests because there were Trinidadians stranded outside of the country that couldn't come in. And then there was a cruise ship that came in, and he quarantined the whole cruise ship for 14 days. Mm-hmm. And these people were so upset. They hired lawyers and they were trying to do all kinds of stuff to get out of, because these were the wealthier Trinidadians. Mm-hmm. But he was very strategic. He had the cooperation of the Trinidad and Tobago, police and military forces to kind of clamp down on everything. And, so right now they have reported within, I think, the last week, 0 new cases, and there's not been any deaths for about 2 weeks. So,
that's good.
It's a small country, so they're able to do that.
Yeah, I mean, it's always proportional to what your population is and so forth. But interesting thing too about cruise ships. This is half comic and half tragic. I wouldn't want to be a stockholder in a cruise ship line right now.
Right now, I know.
This would not be a good time to be holding that stock. Might be a good time to consider buying, maybe.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to be holding that one. But I guess the big takeaway for me is we're starting to see some positive news come out of
Yep,
this,
definitely.
which we need. I
Yes,
mean, from a
yes.
psychological perspective, we need to have that good news. And those of us in LOA circles and positive psychology circles understand the importance of focusing on what we prefer and what we like and what feels good to us, trying to take our minds off the stuff that we don't. But the population at large doesn't know that rule very well.
Right.
In some cases, they resist it. So they really need this. I mean, across the board, we need this kind of good news.
Yeah. Yeah. New York is, they've reported the lowest number of deaths since I think sometime in March, like a month ago. So they're on the
flattening
decline.
thing has paid off to some degree. That's good to
Yeah.
know. Wait, what's going on in the UK, Louis? I haven't really checked on.
Also, it's going down, but the PM is saying, we'd love to open the doors to all your businessmen, but it's just not safe to as yet. If we have another spike, it's going to be, we're going to have to lock you all down again. We don't want to do that. So
yeah, that's the condition in Georgia, where the governor has opened up the state, and so they, their peak is still going up, and so that could be.
Well, there's actually a funny story out of Georgia that I'm sure you wouldn't have heard because you'd have to be connected to the people I'm connected to on social media in order to hear it. But my wife's sorry, it's not a relation. It's a friend of ours from one of the schools that we helped to found. One of the original students of one of those schools posted how he had made a phone call to the state house in Georgia, actually to the governor's mansion, saying he wanted to come in for a tour. And they said, well, we're closed because of the pandemic. He says, well, I thought you opened the rest of the state.
Right.
So apparently it's, some pigs are more important than other pigs. That kind of thing.
Yes. Yeah. There's a lot of controversy because he's opened up bowling alleys and hair salons and tattoo salons, and those are the things that have opened up first. So.
And we're also seeing lots of places, and I won't even comment one way or another about whether this is good or bad from a health perspective, but we're seeing, like in California, reports of beachgoers going to the beaches with the hot weather,
Yes.
and not being particularly worried about it, which is an interesting thing, So, I mean, we could.
What I think is interesting is many different countries and people and groups doing it differently. So we will have some quite interesting data at the end of it.
Absolutely. I agree with that. Yeah. I mean, people can point fingers all they want to, but when you have different approaches, even contradictory approaches, controversial approaches, you're right. You get data out of it, assuming that you're collecting good data, which is also a big concern.
Yeah, Mark and I we read an article about Taiwan. So they're in a unique position. They're like closest to China, but yet they were able to keep clamp down on the pandemic such that they had very little incidence of the disease and, very, even less deaths. And what we learned was that because they had suffered greatly over the SARS virus a year or so ago, they were determined.
More prepared.
Right. They were absolutely prepared. I mean, so much so that now they're able to donate something like 10 million masks to, other countries because they're over the hump and everything. Mm-hmm. But the problem is with Taiwan is because of the political issue with China. Right. They are not included in the UN and the World Health Organization. So they don't get to share their data and all the stuff that they've learned with the rest of the world. So they're in like a very precarious place. So
once again, politics has kind of gotten in the way.
Yes, because China says that's their country and Taiwan says no. And so it's all that kind of.
Yep, that's true. Another thing I've been reading about, I'm curious to know what your take is on this, Ioana, since you are the doctor of statistics here on the show, is I've been seeing a number of reports about, and I actually checked a couple of government websites about this. Particularly, I had one friend who is from Ontario, Canada, he was doing some exploration on the stuff, and he was writing some sort of blog piece. And he wanted to make sure he was getting his interpretation of the statistics he was working with right. So he shared it with friends of his, and we were all kind of weighing in on it. And in the course of weighing in on his statistics, I went and checked the Health Bureau, whatever it's called, for Ontario to see a number of things. One of the things I looked at was what are their criteria that they require doctors to use when reporting whether or not something is a COVID case and what a probable case is. Yeah. And it turned out that under their rules, and I'm really curious to see what you think about this, under their rules, in cases where there's no clear evidence one way or another about what a laboratory result would say, as long as the patient either has a temperature of 100.4 degrees Fahrenheit, or a persistent cough, they should be a probable case of COVID. I mean, that sounds pretty loose to me.
Yeah, there've been, so there's not a lot of standardization as far as labeling the coronavirus deaths, which has led to a lot of people claiming that this is a hoax. And I mean, on the extreme side, and even some of the protesters who don't want to be under the lockdown are calling the nurses and doctors staged actors and actresses.
Oh yeah, you've seen that too. Yep. Mm-hmm.
But as far as the statistics are concerned, they've been very loose with what they've labeled as a COVID death, and so
it raises a question: will we ever really have good data? She's shaking her head. No, this is not encouraging from a doctor of statistics.
Yeah, it's that's the way it's going to be.
That's the truth of life and statistics.
Yeah, that's because, so just as people are having different approaches, people have different criteria, people have different, just like today, the CDC extended the symptoms for the disease by another 6 different things, including poor circulation to the toes and, all kinds of stuff. So like some of the experts are saying that this is so new that people are kind of going with the flow as far as labeling and diagnosing and, documenting what is and what isn't a COVID death. So it's all kind of up in the air.
And it's particularly surprising to me, I guess, because epidemiology, which is all about tracking epidemics, predicting epidemics, projecting how they're going to go and so forth, has been around for 60, 70 years, something like that. I mean, I kind of would have thought we would have, more foundation in place. Am I wrong about that?
Well, we have good programs, good, formulas, but the formula is only as good as the data, and that is always dependent on who's collecting the data and what standards they have putting in place. So,
but I would think not only that, if the businesses here, you've got to be stopped because of this. They're gonna resist. So
yeah,
information can be good and solid, but then the financial world is going to have their opinion.
Exactly.
Yeah, sure.
And that's the same thing what's happening with the vaccine now, in that everybody is developing this vaccine independently, right? So we have all these different entities developing their vaccine. And some people are saying theirs is going to be ready. It will take a year and a half. There are people who are already administering vaccines. So, there's no consensus as far as that's concerned.
You're talking about bleach.
Oh, God, no. But this is not the disinfectant trials, no.
It's interesting because I went for the test. You have to get in the car, drive to Gatwick Airport, open your window a little bit after they've given you some flip cards of what to do.
Mm-hmm.
Then they put through 2 test kits, and you have to swab your back of your throat, hopefully on your tonsils without touching the top of your mouth or your tongue. Okay, nobody gets that right.
I know.
After almost bringing up, and then sticking the same little swabby thing into your nose.
Oh, from your mouth to your nose.
From your mouth to your nose. And then from your nose, you got to put it in a little tube that's got some liquid in it. You break off the stick and it fits perfectly. You screw the lid on tight. You go to, then you drive to the exit station where they check that you've got your barcodes on everything correctly. And this is half done on the internet. So you've scanned it with your phone.
Okay.
And then within 48 hours, and I've got my report today that I'm negative. So
you're free.
But again, I touched my tongue, and so the implications of all the parameters is just mind blowing.
Yeah, there were reports of the tests, some tests not being accurate. And of course, at the beginning, the test that was developed by the CDC here in the US, it was a flop. They found out that it was not actually detecting the presence of the virus effectively. So they had to go back to the drawing board and develop a whole new test. And even that is no guarantee. It's not 100% fail safe. So, and people have different tests, different countries. And then, Virginia, the governor of Virginia, his wife is actually South Korean. And let's just say she's gone to the South Korean government to get tests and different, totally bypassed the White House and the U.S. So it's been quite an interesting thing from, with the U.S. being made up of, so many different states with different governors and governments. It's kind of a melee.
Yeah. I don't even know how to begin to evaluate how all of this is going to iron out. I don't think anyone has any idea of how to evaluate that. But it's going to be fascinating to watch.
Yes.
Because it's going to be a lot of finger pointing. There's going to be a lot of arguing. There's going to be a lot of more finger pointing and a lot more arguing. And I kind of get the feeling it's not going to iron out.
Well, as of today, there will be no more press conferences from
the
White House.
Interesting how his allies, President Trump's allies, convinced him not to do any more press conferences on the coronavirus.
Well, after that bleach and the Clorox thing, they were like, whoa!
I mean, all I can see with Trump, from my point of view, is he's just got it in for the reporters, and he will say anything to attack and antagonize them, and this just came out. As far as I can see, he just hates them.
That's true.
That's my opinion.
Yeah, but he was actually very curious about that. It was not just about the reporters,
Yeah, but I think that riled him up, and always riles him up, and he lets it rile him up. So that causes mistakes because it's you're not emotionally clear and centered.
Mm-hmm.
That's
my 2 cents worth.
We could do an entire episode on Donald Trump and the law of attraction and how good of a master of it he really is. But we'll save that one for another time. Something else too, as this whole thing has kind of unrolled, and we haven't been talking about coronavirus here lately, last couple of weeks or so on the show, except very, very indirectly. So this is kind of a departure to be talking about this, but. Since stuff has come up over the last 2 weeks, I figure we got to get one show to do it, and then we'll just go on to the happier stuff with the rest of the week. But one of the things that has come out has been it's not that it's new, it's more like playing out a pattern that has gone on for over a century, really, which is, I guess I could loosely describe it as the tension and struggle and even sometimes the war between the medical establishment and what I will loosely term the alternative medical establishment. And I say loosely because 100 years ago, we would have put the snake oil vendors into this particular category.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
It has played itself out in a number of different ways. There was the whole thing about hydrochloroquine or whatever that's called.
Yeah.
There have been things about vitamins. There have been a number of different potential cures put out there. I saw something about what do you call it when you put it into a ventilator? You turn it into a mist. I can't think what that's called. There's just a generic term for that. But mist based hydrogen peroxide to put oxygen into the air.
Oh, okay. Like a humidifier kind of thing.
Humidifier kind of thing or ventilator kind of thing. I can't think what they call that. There's a term for that.
Mm-hmm.
But a number of things like this. What was that?
Ionizer.
Ionizer. Yeah, that's the word.
Okay.
Yep. And there have been a number of these, and all of them have gotten shot down mainly by the websites like PolitiFact and Fact Check and so forth. The news fact check examiners and article writers and so forth, and they're basing their rejection.
But Walt, I can't have you come up with a cure. That means I haven't got it. means I don't get credit for it.
I didn't say I was going to come up with anything. I'm just commenting on this overall trend.
I'm just getting the point across that.
But you know what has been interesting, Walt, is that these alternative medicine practices, there's been a kind of a dichotomy in that there are hospitals that are actually administering these so-called alternative methods.
It's true.
Yeah, there are hospitals that are doing
to good effect
intravenous vitamin C.
Mm-hmm.
There are hospitals that included that same hydrochloride in their protocol. There's some hospitals that have been doing, stuff that's not, the normal protocol. They've been trying all kinds of stuff. But I think what has happened is a lot of these alternative methods have been promoted with a political agenda. And that's,
I think all of them have been.
Yeah. So that's caused the problem, because you have the people who are coming out with a lot of these, promoting the theories, not that they've originated. These things have been going on and people have been using them. But once somebody finds out about it, and either they're pro the president or anti the president, and then if they promote it, then it becomes a political issue. And that then makes it a problem, because if you follow that, then you're following the president or not following the president, and it causes this whole. And when you have websites like I shouldn't name names, but anyways, some of the
we can imagine,
that are promoting these things that don't have a very good history, if you know what I mean. It causes it taints some of the recommendations from some of these doctors. But there are doctors. I have friends in my best friend is a nurse practitioner, and they're doing high dose of vitamin C at her hospital. So
yeah, well, there's one of the largest hospital chains in New York called what's it called? Hopewell, something like that. I can't remember what it's called, but they have hospitals on Long Island and in New York City.
Okay.
And they serve a large population, and they're not doing it across the board. It almost sounds like they're doing it as a trial, like double-blind kind of trial.
Exactly.
But they aren't stating that clearly, so I'm not 100% sure. Which is really interesting, because less than a month before that, everybody was condemning vitamin C, and then they come out and do this, and now everybody's saying, well, maybe. But on the other hand, with the hydrochloroquine, is that what it's called?
Yeah, the hydrochloroquine.
With that one, like you said, that's also been tried, and I don't remember exactly where it was, but there was one trial on the East Coast where they shut it down early because too many people were dying from it.
Yeah.
It was actually killing more people faster than the COVID virus supposedly was killing people. So they had shut that one down. So it's kind of like doing testing the hard way.
Yeah,
really.
That's the problem. So that's why they didn't want to wholesale promote it just yet, because they were not sure, although.
And yet the same problem also applies to what the official health organizations have been promoting, because their approaches haven't worked too well either.
True,
so nobody's approach is really clear cut at this point.
Yeah. Yeah, because the rate of survival on the ventilators is not very good.
Terrible. Yeah. I mean, if I remember correctly, with most diseases, people on ventilators survive about 50% of the time. With the COVID virus, those on ventilators survived less than 20% of the time.
Yeah.
That's not good at all.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, usually by the time they put you on a ventilator, it's because they kind of have very little hope of things getting better.
But it shouldn't have gotten that much worse, is the point. I mean, it should have been about the same as other kinds of diseases.
That's true. That's true. Well, again, this is a new so-called disease. And ventilators are these $10,000 equipment, so everybody has a lot of expectations for the fancy thing.
Interesting thing about that. Apparently, the big issue is just lack of oxygen. For whatever reason, with the COVID virus, the body just does not generate enough oxygen to get to the cells in the body. And you've talked extensively
about
how
it attacks the lungs, and that's the main avenue for how oxygen gets in.
So I'm going to say something. I'm going to preface it by saying I'm not a doctor. I'm not proposing a therapy. I'm not saying this is what you should go out and do. I'm just kind of speculating wildly. Like, it'd be really interesting to me if a doctor or a hospital somewhere tried experimenting with medically purified intravenous hydrogen peroxide.
Mm-hmm.
because when you, in those rare cases where a few physicians have been willing to try to do that in the past,
Right.
it pinks up the body real fast. Oxygen just gets to all the cells in the body really quickly.
Yeah.
It'd be really interesting to see what would happen with COVID if they did something like that.
Yeah. I mean, there's even simpler things that others have been reporting on, including a technique that has gone out of favor since the invention of these expensive ventilators.
Mm-hmm.
But there are physical therapists and others who used to do this, and I forgot what it's called. It's like a inversion therapy, essentially. You have the patient bent over so that their head is lower than their torso, so they're in that inverted position, and along with some tapping and other physical manipulation, it helps to drain the mucus out of the lungs.
Oh, okay.
And so that has been very effective in the past. But since ventilators have been invented, people have moved away from it. They no longer teach it in the medical and nursing schools, but it's still actually extremely effective.
It's interesting that you mentioned that, because I saw a YouTube video by, and I think he was an emergency room doctor or one of the doctors treating COVID. Mm-hmm. And he said that because of the ventilator issue, they had tried an alternative, and they'd come up with a breathing technique that involved the patient going onto their front.
Yes.
And he said the reason for that is most of your lung is in your back. So you want to give your lungs more room to expand, which makes sense. So it kind of ties into what you're saying.
Because if you're laying on your back, gravity is going to force all of the mucus to go even deeper into the lungs. But if you're on your belly, that is going to reverse that. And then if you're, tilted somewhat, that even helps more, because then gravity is helping to bring the mucus up to the upper airways where you can then cough it out, because coughing only gets just to the top of the lungs, but to get to the deeper part. So they have them bent over, and then somebody's tapping on their back and having them deep breathe and even do simulation of coughing, and all of that helps to drain the lungs very effectively. So they were saying that in some cases where people had double pneumonia, they would do this every 3-4 hours a day for the patients, and within a day or so they'll be recovered. But
that's really interesting. Yeah. And if I remember correctly, this particular doctor was saying that with the patients they were trying his particular approach with, when they were on their backs, they were in distress. They were very concerned about whether they were going to live. In some cases, they were dying.
Right.
And in many cases, they had difficulty convincing the patients to go onto their fronts. But when they could do that, they would find almost instantly they could breathe better, which is also really interesting. Yeah. Without having coughed anything up.
Right.
Just because they were on their front.
Right. Because they could breathe better. So now oxygen is finally getting to some parts of the tissue that was starved before. And that's the main, cause of distress for the COVID patients. So
there's where I find a lot of encouragement. The fact that there are doctors who are kind of stepping out of the traditional protocols because they're seeing the protocols are not serving the patient the way they need to be served, and saying, okay, let's try some other stuff here. We got to try to do what we can to save these people.
Yeah.
I'll bet you we're going to get some good stuff out of this that will probably take a while for the medical establishment to accept, but it's going to be hard to turn it down, especially in light of what the medical establishment itself was able to do.
Yeah. And I wanted to mention about the medical establishment, and, so there are the medical doctors who are out in the field, and then there are the scientists and the researchers. And in a lot of cases, the practice is several decades behind the research.
Right.
Because these doctors they've been trained by, a previous generation of medical doctors. So it takes a while sometimes for the findings to actually find its way into the schools and then into the actual practice out in the field. So that's
the encouraging part for me is that in this case, the findings are being found by that set of doctors that would be got to last. It's like the process is reversed.
Right. Yeah. And that's the thing. There are a few doctors who are, we're probably considered mavericks, who are like, okay, this is what I was taught in medical school. This is the protocol, but you know what? this is not working, so let me try to do
Right.
something else. There are a few doctors that are like that.
And a lot of credit to them. I give them
Yeah.
a ton of credit.
Yes.
That to me gives me hope that the medical establishment will grow at a faster pace than it has been, and will alter its behavior as needed faster.
Right.
I really do still see the day coming, probably within my lifetime, where the alternative field and the traditional field come much closer together. Maybe they don't completely integrate, but much, much closer. I think it's really where we're going.
Well, the public is kind of forcing that to happen because of the internet, right? Mm-hmm. So people are, getting leery of the practice of medicine. And so they're kind of taking things into their own hand and going online and finding out things. And then they'll even confront their doctors about it and say, listen, this is what I learned, and here's another way we can address this. They'll either do that or they'll actually abandon the allopathic medicine and go to a traditional.
Boy, that'd be stunning.
Yes. Yeah, because
doing that already.
That's like, holy God.
Yeah, that's why now some health insurance are actually they actually cover some of these alternative practices, because they realize that it is actually financially better for them because the patients are healthier, they're better served. So they're like,
no side effects.
Right, no side effects. So yeah.
So, Louis, I haven't really seen much along the following line, but I want to see if you have. Have you seen anything that also tells you that some doctors somewhere are beginning to understand the importance of the human mind in the illness? Because you and I know, we all know here, the importance of mindset, mind state, focus, all that kind of thing. Are you seeing anything that kind of points in that direction? I can't say I've seen anything like that yet.
As I'm not looking for it, I'm not finding it.
Oh, well, that would be pretty straightforward, wouldn't it?
And I realize that if I do look for it, I'll find it.
Well, you might. If you can, that's what I want to know, because I haven't found it. I'm serious. I've been looking. I haven't found anything yet.
Okay.
Yeah.
Maybe you're looking with the intent of not finding instead of finding.
I can't rule that out because I didn't find it. So, until proven otherwise.
Yeah.
But that's what I'm looking for. That's what I'm hoping for. I'm hoping to start seeing a recognition that medical science mainstream needs to take into account the human mind. Because so far that's been just like a little tiny piece, isn't it? It's not like
right.
the major
so that's
players.
why that class, the science of wellness, they're kind of trying to make some headway into that area, because they're recognizing, there might be something here to this whole mind-body connection. But like I said,
Ilona, I'm guessing you've read The Wellness Revolution.
No, I haven't.
Who wrote that?
Very famous guy.
See if I can find it while you're...
What is it about? Well, I can imagine by the name, by the title, but...
Wellness Revolution book.
Uh-huh.
Paul Zane Pilsner.
Pilsner, that name sounds familiar.
Oh, there it is. An
incredible individual. He predicted the whole wellness revolution. He kind of coined the word wellness.
Okay.
And I think he's a doctor himself. He's very, very famous.
Uh-huh.
Says
very,
here,
very
he's
knowledgeable.
an economist, entrepreneur, and professor. So economics sounds like it. What he brings to it?
So he has a practice, or he?
I don't know a huge amount about him. It's just because I was in Herbalife, it was one of the recommended reading, and it's just fascinating. He's an incredible individual.
So he promotes alternative medicine.
Ooh, yeah. He's seen the writing on the wall, and he's kind of predicted it, and it's come true. And he's very popular with people asking him to come on shows and talk, and in public he's very big. But it's a long time since I read the book. Must be about 15 years ago. So, but
sounds interesting. I'll check it out.
It left a large impression on me. How clear the guy is about what's going to happen next.
It leaves an impression on me. Some economists anyway, are in the business of trying to predict large term trends and have been for close to a century now, not quite. Which is what epidemiologists are trying to do. Maybe the epidemiologists
we're
talk
the
to the economists and learn a
same
little bit.
that prediction methods is always
compare notes a little bit. I mean, you know.
Well, the thing is that with prediction models, right? So they always base the models are designed based on previous data, like, you know, something that happened before. So they got all this data and they build these models and it looks fantastic. And they're like, oh, great, we've figured it out. We have this model. And then the new disease is different.
Yeah, how about that?
I know. So they didn't cater for that. And things are different now. The world is a whole lot more, one community kind of thing as it wasn't before. So there are certain parameters that have changed, and they no longer they don't have the models that will actually accurately represent those things. So it's going to be.
It certainly lends weight to Louis' position that it's so much easier to focus on what do I feel good about, what do I not feel good about. It's a lot simpler.
Yes, absolutely, yeah.
Well, the whole thing that I've been thinking about with all your chatting here is your focus and your chat has been largely about different groups of people and having them change. Mm-hmm. And that would never be my point of view. My point of view would always be let's empower the individual to change their own world. Mm-hmm. And I wouldn't bother about or even think. That's why I keep really quiet, because I don't really have too much comment about wanting to change any group, organization, or the world, but I would love the individuals to really realize how much power they have to change their own health, their own situation, their own place, etc. That's to me absolute key and of more importance than anything else.
Yeah, it's been, like Walt said, we've learned that there are other individuals, some of them doctors, who are doing things differently, and that's very inspiring. It gives a lot of, gives us a lot of hope that things are getting better.
But I'd love to give people the hope that they have this control themselves, that they don't have to rely on great doctors to do it, or this guy or that guy or this group or that group. Your healing ability, no matter what a doctor gives you, it comes from inside you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
If your resistance is low enough and you've created the law of attraction to get the right doctor, right pill, right tablet, right place, right time, then you will heal.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that to me is always the important aspect that people must understand, is how much incredible power and control they have over their own life and their own universe.
It's a great point, and I'm glad you brought it up, because I hadn't really stated that clearly. But you're right. That's ultimately what I'm looking for. I'm really not looking to change people, because I know I can't change anyone except myself, and even there I have trouble. But but I certainly don't want to try to change anybody else. I'm more interested in seeing what changes are other people choosing to make, because to me that points toward, if I'm seeing what I'll call leaders, and I think doctors fall into the category of leaders. Mm-hmm. If I'm seeing leaders start to make changes, I know also that their followers are going to make changes. I see that because of, like, I brought up the whole thing about data and how we can't really trust the data, in part because, well, if you can't really trust the data, and if large segments of the population come to that conclusion that the data isn't terribly reliable, they're going to have to go somewhere else.
Yeah.
Their information is going to have to come from some other source. Now, I'm not saying the population as a whole is going to start going inward, but some are. And that to me is like a very encouraging sign. It's like an indicator, like, yeah, there's a movement going on. There's like a shift going on. And I really think that's one of the things that's going to come out of this whole thing. We're going to see more of a shift toward self-empowerment, toward believing oneself.
I think there's people, even us, are underestimating the power of, Walt, your LOA, Law of Attraction Today podcasts and groups that are getting people to continuously look inside, empower themselves, look inside, empower themselves, look inside, empower themselves, which I think is having a far larger effect than these great doctors or these different institutes or these presidents who recommend things which we can't mention. So, I'm really excited about the movement of individuals, groups, et cetera, that are doing what we're doing.
Yeah. Yeah, and it was like I'm saying, just like what we're saying about the eventual overlap between maybe not a complete overlap, but at least to some extent between allopathic medicine and naturopathic medicine, that's going to be driven by the individuals because now they have access to more information, and so that's empowering. But it's the same way that it's going to drive. Some of the people are going to drive that merge. There are others who are going to go in that more, as Louis was talking about, individual power. Like I shared with Walt, I came across a Facebook group called the Kindness Pandemic.
Oh, yes, right.
Started as a result of this pandemic, and I was very curious about it because when I saw it, they had like thousands, 10,000 members, and they had been started like a couple of weeks ago.
Right.
So it had exploded as far as membership is concerned. And what this group is doing is just people reporting on acts of kindness that they've done or they have received as a result of what's happening with the pandemic. And it's
absolutely love the idea.
Yeah.
The idea.
It was great.
Because there's one thing we have to keep as humanity in our forefront of our minds when something like this happens is our humanity, our kindness, our thoughtfulness, our helpfulness. And it could go either way. It could spiral out either side of the coin. But the more of us that focus on that aspect, and creating groups like that, I think are fantastic.
Yes,
I think
it's
really heading in the right direction, and I can fully understand why it's been taken up so massively, and I think it'll probably expand exponentially because people are really aware of that aspect. And once you're centered yourself, once you've got that kind of vibrational flow, momentum or resonance, then you're going to find that just really blow this whole virus thing out of the ballpark.
I think that's true. In fact, we were talking earlier about people on the beach in California, and of course, from the point of view of social distancing and quarantining and all that, that's a terrible thing. But you look at the people as they're being interviewed; they were in a very happy place. They were in a very high vibration place. They were feeling really, really good. And so, from a vibrational perspective, you have to say, that's good stuff. That's actually the human spirit emerging in people who really don't understand how all this theory works that you and I talk about, but it's emerging from them anyway. And talk about, Louis, we've talked in the past about how important it is to do that step one. You identify what it is that you don't want to find what you do want. They have really found what they don't want. They're really clear on what they don't want.
They really don't want to stay at home.
Out.
But, it's interesting. We got the kids playing in the garden, lying in the hammock and screaming and shouting and running around. And the amount of kids who suddenly seem to have landed up on the road above us, looking down at the house, shouting to our kids, waving at them, all this interaction between us and I don't know who all these other kids are. It's just amazing because hey, somebody's alive.
Right. I know. That's what it feels like, right? Yes.
And I let the kids shout and do whatever they want to and talk to any of them because I think it's so important,
Yeah, it is. I experienced that here. When you see someone, because we can look out on our window and see the pond, and you see somebody and you're like, oh, somebody else survived the apocalypse. That's what it feels like almost. And if it's kids, it's even more, energy rising kind of thing. So It's just so great to see. And, you just want to smile and say, hey, we're okay. We made it or something to that equivalent.
We'll do that next time and tell us how it goes.
Yeah, right. Do it. Yeah. That'd be a good report. We've been dealing with a lot of cold, wet weather here in New England for the last week or so. Although on Saturday we had a really nice day, and Louise and I both got out, got some walking in. I did some extensive walking, and an interesting phenomenon was happening there. Now, the way our so-called lockdown works is If you go to a store, you go to some business establishment, you have to put a mask over your nose and mouth and so forth. If you're out in public, as long as you can maintain at least 6 feet from everybody else, you don't have to.
Right.
So what you find out on the walking path is probably about 90% of the people have no mask, about 10% have a mask.
Mm-hmm.
And the interesting part was I've been seeing that for quite some time, ever since this whole thing started. But this past weekend, the ones who had the masks on, the mask was dipping down below the nose or sometimes below the chin. Like there was a little rebellion going on.
But not only that, you'll find, I think, I might be wrong, but you'll find, well, that the people who haven't got the masks seem to be happier.
No doubt in my mind.
Mm.
The people with the masks have terrified looks on their face.
Yes.
The people without the masks are smiling and waving at each other. Hey, how you doing? All that kind of thing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Very interesting to watch that.
Yeah.
So
I've experienced
people
that.
wear their fear in different ways. And in this pandemic, I think the mask is one way that they're really showing how scared they are.
Yeah, that's true. Because I can tell when someone is wearing the mask with an understanding of why they're wearing the mask, as opposed to someone who's wearing it thinking this is going to save them from.
Right.
But we've not been wearing masks, and so finally I made a mask for Mark.
Not for yourself, I see. Okay.
No.
Yeah, you wear it.
Yeah, only because he goes out shopping more often than I do. So he goes to Walmart. He's brave enough. So I'm like, okay, you need a mask to get to Walmart, because he feels like everybody's looking at him like you're not following the rules, kind of thing.
2 weeks ago, we came back from Austria where, there was a lot of the virus in the skiing areas, because it went from all the guys couldn't ski in Italy anymore because of lockdown. So they went over to Austria, and I was in a skiing village in Austria. And when I came back 2 weeks later, which was about 2 weeks before this whole thing fell apart, I had a terrible, terrible, terrible cough. And with all my energy and all the rest of it, I felt I had this feeling that it was very alien.
Okay.
And I had to do Jinshin, and that worked very well. So I was ready. I think I got over it in a day or and a half or something.
Mm-hmm.
But to me, I might have had the virus already.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
to me, a test, if there was going to be a test rather than the one I did
antibody
today,
test.
That's the one that interests me. Is how
Yes.
have I had it already?
Yeah,
That's what
exactly.
I'd like to know.
And so are you now immune from the disease? You know what I mean? That's the real. That's what
then I'll be able to help so many more people.
Exactly.
I'll be much more effective.
Yeah.
Plus, if you'd been in Ontario, you would have been diagnosed, because they would have said persistent cough. Yeah, he's got the virus.
Yes. And the temperature.
Yes, different ways of testing.
But that's interesting to know, because even Mark, at around the same time, he had a terrible cough too, and he was saying it's probably pollen, because he usually gets seasonal allergies, and so
our cars are covered in yellow at the moment.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
And so he wasn't sure if it was, afterwards, then everybody started talking about the COVID virus, and so it's like. So I was like hoping that it was the COVID he had, and so now he's immune, and I'm immune too, hopefully. But without, we don't have the antibody test, so we don't know.
Interesting you should mention immunity too, because I've been curious to see, and I don't think I'm going to see anything real soon just because of how amorphous the data is. But I'm curious to see, does anything come out of this whole experience that informs traditional medicine's understanding of what they call herd immunity? According to the traditional, mainstream medicine, herd immunity doesn't kick in until something like 50 or 60% of the population have been verified to have had the disease in some form or have been, infected by it in some way.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And then it starts to kick in. And I'm beginning to wonder if that's really true.
Yeah.
I'm beginning to wonder if maybe it is in a much lower percentage and medicine just hasn't bought into that yet.
Well, without universal antibody testing, it's hard to know, right?
Yeah, it's almost impossible to know.
Exactly.
Really. Yeah.
Exactly. So,
do you know what I'd like to see from talking about this from a law of attraction point of view? So herd immunity would be what? It would be people focused on what they wanted and to a significant amount of time, so that there is a strong enough vibration of alignment on that subject. Okay. So if we could just measure a subject and its vibration individually and collectively, we would be able to do it for every subject, okay?
Yes.
Collectively.
Right.
And I don't know if anybody will ever get that right, but that sounds to me something that's like, yeah, that's like so cool.
Yeah.
Because Wayne Dyer was speaking to Deepak Chopra, and he was saying that these very special healers that, you know, people just come in contact with them. I mean, we'll use Christ as one of the examples of how, but they're modern day ones. There's guys whom I live next door to who have got this ability. People go to them, and in their presence, they're healed. And he says what they've got is a belief that nobody's sick.
Yeah.
That they have got the strong understanding that, and they've got the strong understanding of alignment. They've got the strong understanding of there is no death. They've got this, you know, they've got this absolute clarity, and they can hold it. And in the presence of that,
no
virus
cannot.
Cannot, because the person who's coming to them is of two thought processes. You know, I've got it, or maybe I can be cured. I've got it, or maybe I can be healed. So they don't have a strong vibration. But when they come into the vibration of it's all okay, you know, everything is always getting better all the time, because that's the way it actually is. There's no resistance. And they come into that vibration. So, yeah, it's another thing. In Egypt, they had the staff, or they had the pyramids and all the other things, but inside them, they had this alignment, this very, very, very powerful alignment, which is source energy, which in theory, hey, don't quote me on any of this because none of it's scientific. Some people were able to, the very highly spiritual, were able to channel their own source energy into objects.
Yes.
And then the objects had the alignment.
Right.
And there's a guy who's doing it at the moment. What's his name? Oh, God, he's fascinating. Quantum healing, if you have a look at it online.
Okay.
The guy who runs it, Quantum Healing, he's now found that he has the ability to take an object and imprint those things that he knows he's very good at. Like he's very good at touching your skull, and all your bones in your skull will align to perfection.
Okay.
Because most of us, you know, our face is a little higher or lower, etc. He can touch you and he'll align that. That is his first and main one, but he's got many other healing abilities. And what he's done is he's now managed to put that into different objects, and he's tried different types of objects, like metal objects and plastic objects, etc. And he's done 3-tier experiments with them and all the rest of it. He's trying to make it more scientific that he can. But he's now getting his other high level practitioners to take their strength and imprint it in these things as well. And of course, he's selling them. But when you watch the guy, he really feels completely genuine to me. And, you know, this is just what he's found works, and he's just putting it out there. I really found that very, very interesting, because he's now learning what the ancient Egyptians were able to do to their staffs and the pyramids, etc. And it's the modern world of starting to do this kind of thing again. And to me, that's great. Those are those people who really want to help others with something that is got alignment in it. But I'm still one of those people. I don't want anything, you know. I don't want a crystal. I don't want the yeast thing. I don't want anything. I want to be able to align myself, and I want to understand the power comes from me. So, you know, all of it's good. I mean, he's enjoying playing with that. Doctors enjoy playing with their stuff, you know, and everybody's having fun with their own trip. So I'm loving watching it all. It's just all fascinating to me.
What you were talking about there touched me on another level, because some of the more leading edge scientists, the Bruce Liptons and so forth, talk about the role that epigenetics may be playing in this herd immunity thing. Right. And they're speculating about, well, what are the different ways that the information...
Define epigenetics for not only me, but I think a lot of listeners.
So epigenetics refers to the fact that the DNA that you have is not the manifestation is not necessarily what's manifested in your life, in your experience. So you can have the gene for something, some disease, but it doesn't have to actually,
You don't have
show
to
up.
activate it. Yeah.
Right, exactly. Turn it so. And so they're saying that there's only like 5% of the illnesses that are actually purely as a result of DNA. The rest of it is because of environments, thoughts, energies, feelings, emotions, all that kind of stuff that kind of turns.
I thought it was all in the genes, isn't it?
No, apparently not.
There's sort of a suggestion that when information is being moved around, so to speak, it's being moved around in a way that's kind of outside the body in some sense, whatever that is.
Right.
And they're trying to figure out what that sense is.
Yes,
they don't really know what that is.
But interestingly, what you're saying, Walt, is that when it comes to epigenetics, it is about belief that translate into a particular energy vibration, right? Whether that's energy is interpreted by yourself, by your own body, or that energy is transmitted to someone else, because your energy can affect other people's energy. And so
if they allow it, yes.
So that may be part of what the herd immunity is, to some extent, in that the people may not necessarily come in direct contact with the virus to get the immunity that results as a consequence. But someone who either has the immunity or believe that they have the immunity and their energy then goes out and affects other people's energy such that they become immune as well. So
that's exactly what I was thinking of, particularly with what Louis said, because Louis was talking about somebody who's very much in alignment, who believes in their own health, who believes firmly that
it's not believes anymore, it knows. There's that little
knows,
difference.
Okay, that's a better way of expressing. But the point is, they're in that very strong place, and maybe that is the influencer in this epigenetic puzzle. Yeah. Maybe it's like the pole. Those are the different poles that are helping to spread this information around, because that would actually make sense from both points of view. It would make sense from the LOA energetic perspective for obvious reasons, but it would also make sense from the epigenetic perspective because they have to have some way of explaining how this information is getting around.
That's the overlap between all the fields, LOA and all the positives. It's all about energy, right? And so our energy, it affects us, it affects our surroundings, our environment, and it does have some effect. And of course, as Louis said, if you are, unaware, other people's energy can have an effect on you, positive or negative. So like those healers, they may be using those emblems, whatever they are. I forgot what you mentioned, but it's all about a transfer of energy, right? That's actually happening so that they can do these, spontaneous healings, miracles, whatever it is that they labeled it as. My grandmother was actually and I don't even know what the term was.
A witch doctor.
Well, she was a medicine woman.
That's the same thing in Africa.
Yes, she was.
That's interesting. Yeah.
I have a story about when I was in South Africa and I was a student. There was a maid that worked in our house, cleaning our stuff, etc. And she had a son, and his name was Mongezi. And Mongezi got sick quite often, and she believed very strongly in taking him to the witch doctor. And the witch doctor's solution for his probably asthma was to take a cigarette butt and burn it into his front chest.
Ouch.
And he had hundreds of marks all over his chest. And I just, there's lengths and breadths that you just shake your head. It's really interesting because she totally believed in that this was doing the best for her son. Totally believed in it.
And see, that's one of the reasons why I am such a proponent of science, because it helps to some extent to protect from some of those issues. Not completely, but to some extent, there is some kind of a protection from the the charlatans.
But I think that the biggest protection in my mind for any individual and every individual would be simple common sense.
Right, but not
Would you
everybody
want
is.
your son to be, or child to be burnt with a cigarette butt? I mean, it's just, to me, common sense. I mean, to me, it's not common sense to give my power so totally over to a different individual. That also doesn't make common sense to me. So, you hear that statement, common sense is not common, but, it's just interesting.
But, the thing is, Louis, that we all have blind spots, that we, have some belief, practice, whatever, and we hold on very dearly to some of them. Not all of them would be positive. There are other people who would probably look down on some of the things that we do and say, that does not make any sense at all. So I think that everybody's at a different place.
LOA is a load of crap, man.
Yeah, to you can see, that's so some people say stuff like that. And, everybody's got something that other people will say, what? You actually believe that? And that's the way it is.
It's all a very interesting exploration of the word resistance, because those are all different levels of resistance going on there. I do like something else that you pointed out earlier, Louis, the fact that what we do here on LOA today and what others in this overall circle do, we are, in essence, by just being in alignment and talking about stuff while we're in alignment, we are more powerful, millions of times more powerful than those outside of alignment. Maybe we are having the kind of influence you're talking about. And
it's not maybe, Walt. It is.
So if that's the case, that's pretty cool.
The more you believe that, the more it'll happen.
That's pretty cool. I like that. All the more reason to become a subscriber. So that's my segue. Okay.
That's right. That's it. Go, boy.
So become a subscriber. If you're not yet subscribed, it's so simple to do. Go to the homepage of the website, loatoday.net, and it tells you how to do it right at the top of the page. Check us out on YouTube, where we normally are viewable. Today, the feed to YouTube didn't work properly, so we'll have to post the video, but we will post it, so you'll be able to see this. And be sure to also subscribe there and click the little bell so you get notified whenever we post onto YouTube. But this has been good. I'm kind of sad that our guest didn't show up, but we talked a lot about the topic we were going to talk about with him.
We did.
And, hopefully I'll be able to get in touch and find out what happened. Maybe he thought it was a different time or something. I'm not sure how he comes to that conclusion, but we'll figure that out. No big deal. We'll save that for another time. But nice job, guys. You found a way to turn the topic into a strong topic even without the guest. I guess I shouldn't be surprised, huh?
We are powerful, remember?
We are powerful.
Get with the program.
So thank you, Louis. Thank you, Ioana. Thank you, listeners, as well. We'll see you all next time
here
on LOA Today. Goodbye, everybody.